Today we are learning about a young boy named Joseph. Joseph was part of a big family. God had a special plan for his life, but that plan did not begin in an easy way. Joseph was one of Jacob's sons. His father loved him deeply. Jacob gave Joseph a special coat. This coat showed love, but it also caused problems. Joseph's brothers noticed the difference. They felt left out. Their hearts began to fill with jealousy. Love that is not handled wisely can create wounds in the family. Parents must be careful how they show love. Children must guard their hearts against jealousy. God gave Joseph dreams. In the dreams, his brothers bowed to him. These dreams were not meant to make Joseph proud. They showed God's future plan. Joseph shared the dreams. His brothers became angry. God sometimes shows us things before others understand them. Not everything God shows you needs to be shared immediately. One day, Joseph went to check on his brothers. They saw him coming and planned to harm him. They threw him into a pit. Later, they sold him to traders going to Egypt. Jealousy grows when it is not stopped. Small anger becomes big sin. Stop jealousy early by choosing kindness. Joseph was taken to Egypt. He was far from his family. He had done nothing wrong, yet he suffered. But God was still with Joseph. God's presence does not leave when life becomes hard. Even when people hurt you, God stays close. Joseph's life looked broken, but God's plan was not broken. God was still working. His brothers had sold him, and he was taken all the way to Egypt, a land he didn't know, far from his home and his father Jacob. It seemed like everything was going wrong for Joseph. But remember, God was with him. And when God is with you, even the worst situations can be turned around. So, here's Joseph in Egypt. He's sold as a slave to a very important man named Potiphar. Potiphar was the captain of the Pharaoh's guard, kind of like the chief of police. Now, being a slave was hard work, but Joseph didn't complain or feel sorry for himself. He decided to do his very best, no matter what. And you know what happened? God blessed everything Joseph did. Potiphar saw that Joseph was honest, hardworking, and that everything he touched seemed to succeed. If Joseph was in charge of the fields, the crops grew bigger and healthier. If he was in charge of the animals, they were strong and happy. Potiphar was so impressed. He thought, "This young man is amazing." So, he promoted Joseph. Soon, Joseph wasn't just a regular slave. He was in charge of Potiphar's entire house. Everything Potiphar owned was under Joseph's care. Potiphar trusted him so much that he didn't have to worry about a single thing, except for what he wanted to eat for dinner. This shows us that when we do our best with a good attitude, even in tough situations, God can bless our work and make us shine. But trouble was just around the corner. Potiphar's wife saw that Joseph was a handsome young man and she started to have bad ideas. She wanted Joseph to do something that was wrong, something that would disobey God and betray Potiphar's trust. Day after day, she would ask him to sin with her. But Joseph was strong. He told her, "No, my master trusts me with everything in his house. How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Joseph knew what was right and what was wrong, and he chose to obey God, no matter what. This is a super important lesson for us. Sometimes, people might try to get us to do things we know are wrong. It can be hard to say no, especially if they keep asking. But like Joseph, we need to be brave and choose to do what's right in God's eyes. One day, When no one else was in the house, Potiphar's wife grabbed Joseph's coat and tried to force him to do wrong. Joseph knew he had to get away. He wriggled out of his coat and ran outside, leaving her holding it. She was so angry that he had refused her, so she decided to tell a terrible lie. She started screaming, and when the other servants came running, she held up Joseph's coat and said, "Look, this Hebrew slave tried to hurt me." When I screamed, he ran away and left his coat. When Potiphar came home, his wife told him the same wicked lie. Potiphar was furious. He didn't even ask Joseph for his side of the story. He believed his wife's lie and had Joseph arrested and thrown into the king's prison. Can you imagine how Joseph must have felt? He had done the right thing. He had honored God and been loyal to his master. And what was his reward? He was thrown into a dark, cold prison for a crime he didn't commit. It was so unfair. It would have been easy for Joseph to become angry and bitter. He could have thought, "Why me, God? I tried to obey you, and this is what happens." But Joseph didn't do that. Even in prison, the Bible tells us that the Lord was with Joseph. God showed him kindness and favor. Soon, the warden of the prison saw the same thing Potiphar had seen. He saw that Joseph was trustworthy and responsible. So, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners. Joseph was basically running the prison. Again, we see that no matter where Joseph was in the pit, as a slave, or in the prison, God was with him. And Joseph chose to have a good attitude and work hard. Sometimes bad things happen to us even when we do what's right. But we can trust that God is still with us, and He has a plan, even when we can't see it. One day, 2 new prisoners arrived. They weren't ordinary criminals. They were important people from Pharaoh's palace. One was Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, the person who served the king his drinks. The other was a chief baker, who made all the bread and cakes for the king. They had both made Pharaoh angry and were thrown into the same prison as Joseph. One morning, Joseph came to check on them and saw that they both looked very sad. He asked them, "Why do you look so down today?" They replied, "We each had a dream last night, but there's no one here to tell us what they mean." Now, Joseph knew that the power to understand dreams came from God. He said, "Tell me your dreams. God can give us the interpretation." So the chief cupbearer went first. He said, "In my dream, I saw a grapevine with 3 branches. The branches grew buds, then blossoms, and then ripe grapes. I took the grapes, squeezed the juice into Pharaoh's cup, and gave it to him." Joseph listened carefully, and then, with God's help, he knew exactly what it meant. He said, "I have good news. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up, forgive you, and give you your job back. You will be serving him his wine just like you did before." The cupbearer was so happy. Then Joseph said, "When you are back in the palace, please remember me. Tell Pharaoh about me, that I was brought here from the land of the Hebrews and that I've done nothing to deserve being in this prison. Please help me get out." When the chief baker saw that the first interpretation was so good, he eagerly told Joseph his dream. He said, "I had a dream too. I had 3 baskets of white bread on my head. In the top basket, there were all sorts of baked goods for Pharaoh, but birds came and ate them right out of the basket on my head." Joseph looked sad. He had to tell the baker the truth, even though it was bad news. He said, "The 3 baskets are also 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up, but he will execute you, and the birds will eat your body." What a scary dream and a terrible meaning. And just as Joseph had said, 3 days later, it was Pharaoh's birthday. Pharaoh had a big party and he reviewed the cases of his cupbearer and his baker. He forgave the chief cupbearer and gave him his job back, but he had the chief baker executed. Everything happened exactly as Joseph had foretold. But do you know what? The cupbearer, once he was back in his comfortable job at the palace, completely forgot about Joseph. He didn't tell Pharaoh about the young man who had correctly interpreted his dream and was sitting unfairly in prison. Poor Joseph was left there, still waiting. It seemed like he was forgotten again. But was he? No, God hadn't forgotten him. God's timing is always perfect, and he had a much bigger plan for Joseph than just getting him out of prison. Joseph would have to wait a little longer, but his time was coming. And that's where we'll stop for today. Joseph's story teaches us so much about patience, faithfulness, and trusting God's plan, even when it's hard and we feel forgotten. Join us next time to see what amazing things God has in store for Joseph. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to come back for the next part of the story. Bye for now.